So before we move on with our new lesson, I do want to review what we covered last time when we talked about section 3.4 variables on both sides. So here I have two problems that should be pretty similar to the problems that we worked on in the last section, and I do want to refresh your memory on how these were done because I promise you whatever we learned in that section is not going away. So let's take a look at the first one on the left here first. I have 2x plus 7 equals to 10x minus 9. Now this is a problem that you have to solve. I didn't write down solve, but that should be apparent to you because of the equal sign that is present there. There's an equal sign and there's a variable. You are going to be asked to solve that equation. So can someone tell me, what would be your first step in solving this particular equation? I'll give you a little bit to think about it and then raise your hand and tell me. So hopefully someone said, get rid of one of the variables because I have a variable on the left side and a variable on the right side, x terms. And in order to solve for this equation, I need to eliminate one or the other. And I have a choice. I have a choice in the matter. I can eliminate either this x term or this x term. And my preference is to eliminate the x term with a smaller coefficient. 2 is smaller than 10, I get rid of the 2x. You can get rid of the 10x if you want to. My method is a little easier, I think, so I'm going to stick to that. How do I eliminate a 2x? By subtracting 2x from both sides, of course. And that's my first step. I'm getting rid of the x term on the left side and keeping the one on the right side. That yields, this right here is gone. 2x minus 2x is 0, just as I planned, which leaves me with a 7, a positive 7, but I'm not going to write that plus sign in front of it, equals to 10x minus 2x is 8x minus 9. Good, good. And then I have a two-step equation. So as a refresher, can someone tell me what's my next step in solving this two-step equation? Hopefully someone said add 9 to both sides. You would be correct. You add 9 to both sides. And once that's done, once again on the right side this time, minus 9 plus 9 eliminates down to 0. And I'm left with 8x equals to 7 plus 9, which gives me a 16. And now, my last step, can someone tell me what should I do last? Of course, divide both sides by 8. Because this 8 is being multiplied by x, the opposite is to divide. So I'm multiplying both sides by 8, which simplifies this pair of 8s down to 1. So they're 1, and I'm not going to write that 1. And 16 divided by 8 is just 2. So x is 2. Perfect, nice, simple, and done. Now let's take a look at, first of all, any questions on the first one? Alright, let's take a look at the second one. What would be the first step in solving this one? It's a little different, the first step at least is a little different than what we did in the first problem. So what's the first step here? Hopefully someone said, break up this parenthesis by distributing the 3 to both members of the parenthesis. And I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to go ahead and distribute this 3 via multiplication to everything inside, because this 3 is being multiplied by the parentheses. So when I break it down, I have to multiply the 3 into both of the members of the parenthesis. This yields 3 times 2x plus 3 times 1, and all that equals to x plus 8. And then of course you go ahead and do your simplification. 3 times 2x is 6x, 3 times 1 is 3, equals to x plus 8. Now this looks very similar to the problem right here. So what would you do next to solve this problem? Hopefully, someone said, get rid of one of the x terms. And hopefully someone decided to eliminate this x term. You could always eliminate the 6x, but I find, again, eliminating the smaller x term, in this case, this one is a coefficient of 1, which is much smaller than 6. So I tackle this x, I get rid of it by doing minus x. Of course, that means the two x terms on the right side, or the x term on the right side is gone. I'm left with 6x minus an x, which is 5x, plus 3, equals to 8, because that's just 0. And my next step, hopefully someone said subtract 3 from both sides. So 5x equals to 5. And my last step, divide both sides by 5. Over here we have simplification to 1, so that's just 1. Same thing here. Both of them simplify to 1, so 1 times x is x, and here I just have a 1, so x equals to 1. And that is it for the review. Let me know if you have any questions, and I want to go ahead and move on to the problems from this section. Alright, so today we're talking about section 3.5, which is inequalities. Now you are familiar with inequalities, at least in their basic form. You do have that alligator symbol, as it's most famously called, that can face either way. And it looks like this, or like this. And here I have just a number line without any numbers. And the easiest way to remember which way the inequalities go is if the alligator symbol is pointing this way towards so if the bigger part of the sign, or the mouth, is facing towards the variable like such, then the inequality is moving in the right direction, this way. Kind of like the sign will tell you in which direction to go that way. On the other hand, if the variable is facing the sharp end of the alligator symbol, or the smaller part, depending on how you look at it, then the inequality is going in the left direction. So it all depends on which part of the inequality symbol the variable is facing. If it's facing the larger side, then it means go right. If it's facing the smaller side, that means go left. And the variable itself can be, or the symbol itself can be flipped. So you have to look at variable, which side of the sign, variable, which side of the sign. Because if I wrote the variable right here, then that would be very different than writing the variable over here. So it's all about the orientation of the variable itself towards the alligator sign. Okay, there are several words that can describe these inequalities. For this case, where the variable is facing the larger part of the alligator symbol, you can use or see greater than, more than, or above. These are all positive statements. All positive statements. Greater than, more than, above. It means go to the right side. And your variable should be facing the larger side, or the larger part of the alligator symbol. On the other hand, if you have less than, fewer than, or below, these are all negative statements as I like to call them, or statements that make things smaller, then you want to go to the left side, and the smaller part of the alligator symbol should face the variable. Now, none of these statements actually tell you to include whatever starting point you're starting with. This is greater than, which means it's greater than something, more than something, above something, but they don't include that something in the inequality, or in this inequality as well. Here, less than something, fewer than something, below something, but they don't include that something in there. So what do you do when you don't include that something? Well, on the equation, or sorry, on the number line, you will do an open circle. The open circle tells you and me that you're not including that starting point. You're greater than that starting point, you're more than that starting point, you're above, but you don't include that starting point. Same thing here. We put that open circle to tell us that we're less than that starting point, but we don't include that starting point. We're fewer than, but we don't include whatever we're fewer than. We're below that something, but we don't include that something. Now, you can also have these symbols. These are similar to the greater than or less than symbols. These are called greater than or equals to, or less than or equals to. Just like before, if the variable is facing the larger portion of this greater than or equals to symbol, then you're going to the right side. If the variable is facing the smaller portion or the smaller point of that sign, this less than or equal to alligator sign, then you're going into the left side. Now, when you have this equals or this line at the bottom, this tells you you're actually including your starting point. You want your starting point to be included in the inequality. So the statements that imply this symbol are greater than or equal to, see, greater than, but also equal to your starting point. At least, so the starting point included, no less than, again, it has to be that starting point in there, less than or equal to, at most, no more than. So if you see any of these statements, then you're dealing with the greater than or less than equals to. If you see any of these statements, you're dealing with just the usual greater than or less than signs. Now, on a number line, whenever you graph an inequality that has equal to part to it, like greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, and you want to include your starting point, you want to include that something that you're starting from, you'll do a shaded in circle. Open circle if you don't want to include your starting point, a shaded in circle if you want to include your starting point. So if it's just greater than but not equal to, open circle. If it's greater than or equal to, then you have to include that particular starting point and you close your circle, shaded in. So let's take a look at a few examples. Actually, before we do that, any questions? Because this can be a bit confusing. And I'll bring this back for us to refer to. But let's move on and look at some practical examples, and hopefully this will make a little bit more sense, because again, I'll refer to this chart periodically. Let's look at some very simple examples. Here we have an inequality. X is greater than 2. X is greater than 2. That's a simple inequality, about as simple as they get. Now I'm going to bring this chart back real quick. Remember when I said when the variable faces the larger point of the alligator symbol? So here that X is facing the larger alligator symbol. Same thing here, that X is facing the larger part of the alligator symbol. So which way should my inequality be heading? If someone said in the right direction, you're absolutely correct. So I will be heading in the right direction in just a little bit. Next, where am I starting from? What is my starting point? Hopefully someone said 2 is my starting point. X is greater than 2. So I'm going to be starting at the 2. Now my last question for you. Is the 2 included in this inequality? It is not. X is greater than 2, but 2 is not included. If it would have been, you would have that equals line at the bottom. It's not there, which means 2 is not included in this inequality. X is greater than 2, but X cannot be 2. So would you mark an open circle or a closed circle whenever you graph this particular inequality? Hopefully someone said the open circle. Alright, so I know I'm starting at 2, and since this is just a simple greater than and not a greater than or equals to alligator symbol, I will need to do an open circle at 2, just like that. Some people like to write the open circle above the number line. I like to stick it on the number line itself, and then I'm going in the right direction. I'm going to make this arrow like this heading to the right, and you're done. That's it. You have completed this problem. You've graphed this. So if they're only asking you to graph it and there's really nothing else you can do to this problem, you're done. Questions? Let's look at another example. We're going to go ahead and look at the one on the left. So here I have a is greater than 3. The variable is once again facing the larger portion of the alligator symbol. So which way should the inequality go? In which direction? It should go in the right direction. Very good. And only in the right direction, not the left direction. Now this alligator symbol could have faced the other way. I can flip this entire thing and I can have the... So actually let me write that on here. This and this are exactly the same. They're the same statement. Now here, some might get confused because this arrow, it's not an arrow, it's the greater than symbol, but something of this is the arrow, and they will point the inequality in that direction. No, it doesn't matter which way this particular alligator symbol is facing. And you look at the variable and its relation to the alligator symbol. The variable is facing the larger portion of the alligator symbol, which means it has to go right. Even if this is facing left, your inequality has to go right because the variable is facing the larger portion of the alligator symbol. So which direction are we heading? Right, because the variable is facing the larger portion of the alligator symbol. What is our starting point? Hopefully someone said 3. Is 3 included in this inequality? No, because I don't have that equal sign at the bottom. This is a is greater than 3. A is greater than 3. This is not a is greater than and or equals to 3. A is not equal to 3 at this point. So open circle or closed circle at the 3. Open circle, heading in the right direction. That's it, you're done. Now let's take a look at, first of all, any questions? Let's take a look at this particular inequality. Y is less than -1. Now I can write this as y on this side less than -1. These two are the same inequality. The important part is which part of the variable faces the alligator symbol. Y faces the smaller part of the alligator symbol, the pointy part. Y faces the smaller part of the alligator symbol, the pointy part. They're the same. Don't get confused by this. This is not an arrow. It doesn't tell you which direction to point your inequality. That is told by which part of the variable interacts with the alligator symbol, nothing else. If the variable is closer to the pointy end or the small part of the alligator symbol, then we move in the left direction, that way. Okay, so we just figured that out. We're moving left. What's my starting point? Hopefully someone said -1. And open circle or closed circle? Open circle, because I don't have that equal sign at the bottom. Y is less than -1. Y is not -1. Open circle at -1. Heading in this direction. That's it. Nothing else you can do. Alright, let's take a look at another one like that. Once again, I want to show you what it can look like as well. I can have y just like this. Y is less than 4. Y is less than 4 in both cases. It doesn't really matter which way this symbol is pointing, as long as as the variable is on the right side of that symbol. In this case, the variable is next to the pointy or the small end of the alligator symbol. Same thing here. And when that's the case, when the variable is next to the pointy or the small end of the alligator symbol, we're moving in which direction? Hopefully someone said left. Sharp end, small end, left. Big end, or the blunt end, right. What's my starting point? 4. And I probably should have, but by this point, hopefully you already know why I use an open circle. Because this inequality does not include 4. Y is less than 4, Y is less than 4, Y is not 4. There is no equal sign at the bottom here. So, you're done. That's it. There's nothing else for us to do. Questions? Let's move on to the next one. B is greater than or equals to 0. Do you see this line underneath the alligator symbol? This means that whatever number is the starting point in this inequality, it's included. It's part of the inequality. The first 3, that starting point was not part of the inequality. When you have the equal sign, the combo alligator and the equals, then that starting point is included. First of all, which direction am I going to be heading? Left or right? Now don't forget, I can rewrite this as this if I really wanted to. They're the same. I only care about which side the variable is on the alligator symbol. Here the B is facing the blunt or the larger portion. Same thing here. When the variable faces the larger or the blunt portion, which direction am I going? Hopefully someone said right. What's my starting point? Zero. Good. Open circle or closed circle? Closed circle, hopefully someone said. Again, because my it's equals to, my starting point is included. My starting point is included. So I do a closed circle, or a shaded in circle, at the 0. You can make it a little bigger if you wanted to. And then heading in the right direction. Okay, let's look at this one. Z is greater than or equals to 6. My variable is facing the larger or the blunt portion of the alligator symbol. So which direction am I going? right? Where am I starting from? 6. Open or close circle? Closed, because it's also equal to. The 6 is included. That's it. Done. Moving on to the next one. F less than or equal to -5. My F is facing the sharp or the small portion of the alligator symbol. Which direction am I going? If the variable faces the sharp or the pointy part of the alligator symbol. Left. What's my starting point? -5. Open or close circle? Closed, because it is also equal to. The -5 is included in this inequality. Last one. My variable here is on the same side as the small or the pointy portion of the alligator symbol. Remember, I can write this as well. Same thing. Same thing. Which way am I going if the variable faces the small or the pointy part of the alligator symbol? Left. My starting point? 1.5. Open or close circle? Closed, because it's also equal to the 1.5. The 1.5 is included. So I started 1.5, which is in between 1 and 2. I'm heading left. And that's it. You're done. Any questions with these examples? These are some of the simpler examples in this lesson, so please let me know if this is in any way confusing. Alright, moving on to something a little different. Alright, next we're going to look at word phrases. So you looked at word phrases before when you're doing equations and even just expressions, and they're coming back, and they'll keep coming back. Word phrases don't go away, just like word problems don't go away. So your job here is to translate the word phrase and then graph it. So let's take a look at what this looks like before I do anything else. So here I have a word phrase, a conveniently placed number line for us to use, and a box that I'll explain what's that for in just a little bit. So let's go ahead and read the word phrase. Let's have someone in the class read it out loud. Okay, so look at the keyword. Look at the keyword to figure out exactly which alligator symbol we need to use here. At most. Let's refer to this cheat sheet that we made a little bit ago. Let's find at most here. Ooh, it's right here. It's one of our combo alligator symbols that includes the equals to. And in this case, the variable has to be next to the pointy or the small part of the alligator symbol. So it's the combo symbol, and the variable has to be on the side of the smaller, the pointy portion. Okay, perfect. So in this case, they didn't give us a variable. You get to choose a variable. Yay. I'm going to choose C because capacity starts with C. You could have chosen anything else. Could have chosen X. I'm going to choose C. And I know I'm going to use the combo alligator symbol, but do I make it point like this or like that? Remember, at the most, the sharp end has to be pointing towards the variable, like this, and at most 2. And you're almost done. The last part is to graph this, and hopefully that is now easy. So my variable is less than or equals to 2. Which direction am I going? The pointy end is facing towards the variable. Which direction? Left, of course. Always left if the pointy end faces the variable. My starting point? 2. Open or close circle? Close circle because it's also equal to. And that's it. You're done. You translated, you graphed it, you're done. Any questions? Alright, let's take a look at another one. Someone in the class, please read number 2. So let's look at the keyword. More than. Let's look at our cheat sheet. More than, right here. It's a simple alligator symbol, it's not one of the combos. And in more than, the variable has to be next to the blunt or the large portion of the alligator symbol. So the variable is next to the large portion of the alligator symbol. So our variable, and again, you can choose anything that you like. If we're talking about desks here, there are more than 5 desks in the classroom. I'm going to go with D. I don't know why I'm going with D. Doesn't really matter. Could be any variable. Could be classroom. I don't know. I think D is best. Which direction should my alligator symbol be? Like this or like that? More than. Variable has to face the larger portion of the alligator symbol, like this. So again, it doesn't matter where the variable is, left or right, as long as its relation to the alligator symbol is correct, you're fine. And it's more than 5. That's it. Translated. Perfect. Am I going in the left or right direction? Since my variable is pointing at the larger portion, or my variable is next to the larger portion of the alligator symbol, I have to go right. What's my starting point? The 5. And open or close circle. Open circle. 5 is not included. It's not a combo symbol. No equals. And that's it. Translated, graphed. Last one. Someone in the class, please read number 3. Okay, so we have a keyword here, below. Let's look at our cheat sheet. Below. It's a simple alligator symbol, not one of the combos. And the alligator symbol has to face the smaller part of the alligator symbol. The sharp point has to face the variable. The variable has to be next to the pointy or the sharp part of the alligator symbol. So I'm going to choose a variable. T for temperature. Sure, why not? And the sharp part has to point at the variable, the sharp part, like that. Which direction am I going? Since the sharp part is pointing at the variable. Hopefully, you said left. Again, don't let this fool you. This doesn't tell you which direction you're going. The direction is determined by which part of the variable is interacting with the alligator part. Variable, sharp part, left. If this was variable and the blunt or the larger part, then you would go right. Variable, sharp part, left. And my starting point? -2. Open circle or closed circle? Open circle. No combo symbol. It's not equals to. The -2 is not included. We're going left. And you're done. Any questions here before we move on to our very last part of this lesson? The last part of this lesson, and we're almost done here, is writing compound inequalities. In compound inequalities, you'll have two inequalities in one word phrase or word problem. So you'll have two of them on the same number line. Now, don't let this confuse you or make this seem more difficult than it is. All it is that you have two inequalities combined into one. You have two inequalities on the same number line. That's all it is. Two inequalities, but they're sharing a number line as opposed to being on separate number lines like you had them be, for example, in this situations. Here, they were all on separate number lines. Now imagine if you had more than one of these on the same number line. And of course they have to be the same variable, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So you have more than one inequality sharing a number line, because sharing is caring, of course. So let's take a look at what this actually will look like. So can someone in the class read number 1 out loud? So this is a word phrase. They told us what the variable should be. They don't leave this one to imagination. A number, t, is either less than -2 or greater than or equal to -2. So we have two keywords here. Less than, greater than, or equal to. Cheat sheet time. Less than, that means I'm going to have the alligator symbol pointing its Sharpie end at the variable. So here I have some room. Let's go ahead and do that. My variable is t. And because I have less than, the sharp part is going to point towards the variable. Okay, but we're not done here. Or greater than or equal to 1. So greater than or equal to. Let's find that one too. Greater than or equal to. Now this is a combo symbol, and the larger or the blunt portion of the alligator symbol is facing the variable. Combo with the large part facing the variable. Okay, I could do that. Like that. It all works out. Less than, sharp part points at the variable, and it's less than -2. Greater than or equal to, combo symbol, large part points towards the variable. That works. 1. That's it. Translated. Looks a little complicated, but it's really not after you practice a little bit. Take it one step at a time. Deal with this, then deal with that, and you're done. Now let's go ahead and graph this. Let's go ahead and graph this. And I graph this just like I translate this. One step at a time. I like to go left to right. You can go right to left. In this case, it doesn't really matter. So 1 and the t. Let's look at this part here. So t is greater than or equals to 1. So greater than or equals to, my alligator symbol has its bigger side pointing towards the variable. That part is going to go in which direction? Left or right? Since the larger part is facing towards the variable. Right. Remember, large part towards the variable, always right. My starting point, 1. Open circle or closed circle? It's got that equal sign. The combo, closed circle. And it's heading right. So if you just look at this right here, if I cover this up real quick, that would make sense. T is greater than or equals to 1. The larger part of the alligator symbol is facing towards the variable. That's why it's going to the right. And it's a closed circle because it's a combo symbol. The 1 is included. Now, let's take a look at the other side. T is less than -2. Okay? The sharp point of the alligator symbol is pointing towards the variable. Which way are we going if the sharp point is pointing towards the variable? Left. Open or close circle? Open circle at -2, heading left. That's it. You're done. I know it looks a bit complicated. Some of you might be a tad bit confused, but again, one step at a time. Write this part first, write this part second. Look at one part first, look at the other part second, graph them separately. They just happen to be sharing a number line. That's it. That's not so bad. That's not so bad at all. Alright, moving on to our last problem for this lesson. Someone read that out loud for me, please. Okay, so we have two keywords here. Greater or equal to and less than. And they tell us what variable to use, n. So I'm going to put my variable in the middle. With compounds, you want the variable in the middle. It makes your life a little easier later. And let's get our cheat sheet out. First, I'm going to look at the greater or equal to. Greater than or equal to. Close enough. Greater than or equal to, I have the alligator symbol pointing its large part at the variable. Combo symbol, large part pointing towards the variable. Now another strategy you can use is don't even write the other part yet. Write this one out first and then figure out the other part. So large part voice towards the variable, pointing towards the variable. Which direction am I going? Right? And of course this was equal to 0. That's my starting point. Is it going to be an open circle or a closed circle at 0? Closed circle. Because I have the combo symbol. And I'll worry about the sign in just, or the direction in just a second on the number line itself. Let's do the other part. Less than. Less than. The pointy end of the alligator symbol is facing towards the variable. The pointy end. Pointy end. Less than 4.5. That's my other starting point. If the pointy end is facing towards the variable, which direction am I going if it's pointy? This way. Open circle or closed circle? Open because it's a simple symbol, not a combo, which means the 4.5 is not included. The 4.5 would be right over here in the middle of the 4 and a 5. Now I'm going to do my signs, or the directions. Heading this way. Heading this way. They intersect somewhere in the middle. You're done. That's it. That's why I didn't do these first, because if I did, I would have to readjust them later. So if it's a combo, you can do your circles, figure out which directions, but do the actual directions on the number line after you know where both of them are going. In the case of these, where they're going in this way, you can probably do them right away. In these cases, you probably want to wait, so that way you don't have overlaps. At any rate, this is probably the toughest problems you'll encounter in this lesson. So we'll work on these some more, but for right now, I do want you to start practicing some of the easier problems and these problems as well, but believe me, we'll go over these before we have a quiz on this. So any last questions before I end this? Okay, all right.